Any question about the channel?
Does the monitor section dump into the bus? Stereo bus?
There's a mix B, and there's a button in the middle which is monitor mix to main mix.
Oh.
So with this console, this particular one here is a 32 channel console, so you've got 32 returns through the channel path, 32 through the monitor path. You've got 4 stereo reverb returns here, and there's also, like the old school Neve consoles with a split monitor section, there's actually 8 tape returns. That's what they used to be called. We're calling them DAW returns nowadays. There, which gives you a total of 80 inputs for mixing.
Are you making a 16-channel desk?
Yes, the console is actually modular. You can't see. You often see on large format consoles the aluminium dividers between in bins of 8 or 12. This is actually constructed the exact same way, but what we've done, the dividers, which are technically they're called cheeks, they're actually nested underneath the front panel. So they're there, they're just concealed, so you get a continuous smooth look. But they're actually under there. You can see the faders and the meters, and if you were to look around the back, you can see it is actually constructed in bins of 8 channels.
Great.
So you can start at 8 is the smallest unit?
16 is the smallest frame we'll be making. We will be making some 8-channel frames just for demo purposes, but I couldn't imagine why anyone would want to buy an 8-channel console. The consoles larger than 32 channels will have a master section here, which will be 12 channels wide instead of 8, so it'll be basically like 2 blank channels on either side of it. The actual switching of the buses, each channel switching onto the mix buses, is not done in the channels, it's actually done on relay cards in the master section. Who's looked underneath an old Neve console? The mix buses run the length of the console, they're in an aluminium extrusion, and they're unbalanced, and they run, as I said, about minus 30 dBu. They're a microphone type signal running the length of the console. And being unbalanced, they're subject to pick up and hum. You've got to be actually careful with an old Neve console not to put a transformer near underneath the console, or it will get into the mix buses. What we've done here, the switching onto the groups is done in the master section. We take the post pan-pot signal from each channel, and in a bin of 8 channel, we feed it down a 50-way ribbon, a shielded ribbon, to the master section. The mix buses are that long. And we take the feed to the mix bus after the transformer, which means the mix buses are balanced. This is the old school voltage summing mix buses. Also, if you've used an old Neve console, you know if you pan a channel to the middle and bus to a pair of, say, buses 1 and 2, the VU meters will go to -3 when you pan in the middle, like they should. What happens when you bust to 2 more buses at the same time? The VU meters go to -6. Who's experienced that? Yep. It's actually a defect in the original design. They couldn't do anything about it. Because we're using relays to switch onto the buses, they're double pole relays, we can actually terminate the bus and the channel, in either, whether it's on or off, so the impedance doesn't change, and it doesn't matter how many buses you assign, the panning doesn't change. So that's an improvement on the original. Okay, let's talk about the groups here. We can route the channels onto the groups. The routing's done here in the master section, so you select the channel. So you can see this channel here has the select light on. We can select the channel. Some of you may be able to see channel 2 is indicating there. And if I want to switch stuff onto the buses, you'll see it's lit up there and here. I'll go back to 1. Like that. That's how you control the busing. There's 8 scene memories to store all your busing and things like that. In fact, all the settings, all your aux sends on and off and the sources. The aux sends can be pre-fade channel path, post-fade channel path, and pre-fade monitor path, post-fade monitor path. To select the source for the auxiliaries, you just press the level control. The 2 LEDs cycle through the 4 choices, and the button next to it turns it on and off. We've designed it, so it's pretty quick and easy. All of that's stored in the scenes. The groups here, when you feed signal onto a group, there's 8 groups or buses. This row here is the 8 group trims, so that controls the group output level. So it's normally fully clockwise is unity or 0 dB, which is where you'd normally want it. These controls here are pans, and these faders here, they're not group output levels, they're actually group to mix faders. So you can send each of the 8 groups onto the stereo mix by moving the faders up and panning left or right. As it is, that's what's happening. The group will go onto the mix. If you want to use that as an external input, you just select the DAW buttons. You can also use that as an insert between the group and the mix. So you go out the group output, through your insert chain and back in the DAW input. That's how you do your insert. After the fade is there, there's a separate electronically balanced output, post-fade, which is a stem output. So if you want to do stem mixing, that's your means to do 4 stereo stems. This is the compressor. This is a 2254 compressor. Probably a lot of you have used those compressors. It's the exact same circuit. Okay? Same circuit. Not a lot to say about that. When you press this button here, mix, it actually puts the compressors on the stereo mix. Pre-fade, of course. And it automatically turns on the stereo link button. If they're not assigned to the mix, the compressors are just available on the rear panel connector for patching wherever you want. Over here, up the top here, the 2 maroon coloured controls here. This is the desk oscillator, which has got a few different frequencies plus pink noise, and you can route that. If you turn it on, it's just routed to external connection that you put on the patch. You can route it to the stereo mix, to the groups, and to the direct outs as well. Some people might still have. Who's still got tape? Anyone? Few? Yep. Well, you sometimes still need an oscillator to align your tape, so there's the ability, you can route it to the direct outs. The green control and these 3 buttons here are the SLS, or Studio Loudspeaker. Turn it on, and whatever is selected down here at the control room source is routed to Studio Loudspeaker. External to SLS, if you've got maybe you've got some speakers and an amp out in the studio, maybe there's a Game Boy or a PlayStation or something like that out there, or a CD player. That's the traditional use for it. One more use, which is a little bit novel, PFL to SLS. Some recording engineers like to have a little speaker like an Auratone or something like that on their console, and when they PFL it, they want to hear it in a little speaker. So we've just used the SLS function for that, because if you're mixing and you need that PFL function, you're probably not going to be using the actual studio speakers at the same time, so you can patch it to your little speaker on the console, and then when you're in PFL mode, whenever you solo a channel, it'll just route to the little speaker. Okay? That probably is a good tie-in for me to talk about the solos. The console has 4 solo modes. AFL, after fade listen, which is non-destructive. PFL, pre-fade listen, non-destructive. Solo in place, which is destructive because it just cuts all the other channels. And solo in front. I'll just explain solo in front. Which is also non-destructive. When you solo a channel in SIF mode, the mix is unaffected, but that channel, additionally, in addition to feeding the stereo mix, also routes its signal onto the AFL bus. And in the control room monitor section, the AFL bus is fed through to the output at full level, and the stereo mix is attenuated by about 10 dB. So you get the solo channel about 10 dB higher than the rest of the mix. So you can hear it hear your solo channel in perspective. You'll find on some big Neve consoles like the 88RS that has a solo in front mode, and in fact on that one it's actually, you can vary how much the mix drops in relation to the AFL signal. Here we've just set it fixed, but it still gives you the same function, which is, it's not a very common function, but a lot of people like it. There's a few different modes of operation, even with solo in place. If you know, with a solo in place, you solo the channel, the others cut. That's reasonably obvious or self-explanatory. You'll see at the moment, it's momentary. Okay, so I press it and it solos. I can put it here into latching mode, solo on, solo off. Again, reasonably obvious. A third mode is what we call auto mode. And I'll pay respect where respect is due. I first saw this mode on an SSL 5K console about 20 years ago. And I thought, that's a good idea. I've always had it in my mind. If you press it on, you press it off. Just like what we saw before. But if you press and hold it for more than half a second, it's momentary. So you want to do a long audition, turn it on, turn it off. Short audition, done. And the decision interval is just under 1 second. It's about 0.6 seconds from what I can remember. One other little subtlety. Who's used a control surface? Everyone? Okay. This pretty obvious when you think about it. It probably hasn't crossed your mind much. If you use an old analog console, you'll know when you press a solo button or a cut button, when you activate the function, say the cut turns on when you press the button. Okay? The cut stays on. When you want to take the cut off, you press down the button and the cut goes off when you let go. If you use a control surface, the cut goes on when you press it and the cut goes off when you press it. And if you're used to one or the other, you probably have a slight preference as to which way you want to go. Well, because this is all done by software, we thought, well, that's no problem. We've got a button here called switch field. So at the moment, you'll see if I press the cut on and off, just like an older analog console. I turn that on, off. See the difference? That's global on all the buttons. Okay, so you can do the same with your aux sends and everything like that. So there's no question, you know, I prefer if the buttons work this way or that. You just dial in what you want. Okay, there's a few other little features like that which we've done for ergonomics. Alright, moving on down here. This is the aux send masters. There's 3 mono and 2 stereo aux sends. This here, I think I might have briefly mentioned it before, is 4 stereo reverb returns. You can route them to the headphones. There's actually 2 sets of headphone amps in the console. You can route them to the main mix or to the monitor mix or mix B, whatever you like to call it. Okay. There's the controls for the 2 set of headphones. You can select one or multiple sources to feed each. These buttons here are sort of like master buttons for the console. You can select the metering for the channels in the master section. In the channels, it's just a little LED here. The channel bar graph meters can show channel path, monitor path or direct out. And when we do it, it's not done yet, but when we do the automation, they'll also indicate the fader level. The master buttons, here you'll see left, right, dot left, dot right, CL, CR and AL. So that's left, right, main mix. That's mix B or monitor mix. That's whatever is the control room source, whatever's being fed to the speakers. And that's AFL. That's the first choice. Next one is the groups, 1 to 8. You'll see also up here, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1, 2, 3, 4. These 8 VU meters are always on the groups. So you've got analog VU meters there, and here we can indicate in VU or PPM the same thing. The aux sends, 3 mono and 2 stereo, plus we put TFL there, and the 4 stereo reverb returns. I mentioned it can do VU or P. One extra function we've put in VU mode, there's a button for 6 dB dump. It just desensitises the bar graphs by 6 dB, so they're not pinning on some types of music. Finally down here, this is the control room monitor section, which I mentioned before is implemented as a high fidelity solution. It's sonically clean. So you know what you're hearing through your speakers, as good as your speakers are at least, is what's actually the signal that's coming in.